Zambia. It's a country probably not on the radar of most investors. But like the mighty Zambezi River it's named after, Zambia's economy has been growing slowly and steadily, recording a GDP growth rate of over 5% per annum. Now the country is on a brink of change. A new transitional leader, Rupiah Banda, begins his term facing a global economic slowdown, a drop in commodity prices, and rising food and fuel prices. But many say Zambia has faced a lot worse, from record interest and inflation rates to high poverty levels. And now is the time to decide on the future of Zambia's thriving economy. And luckily, it's in a good position to do so due to some sound macroeconomic policies and a record boom in copper prices.
Most fundamental reason, I believe, has been the openness. Most of this growth, of course, has been spurred by the copper boom. Now, copper has always been the underground, but for people to work it, to dig it out, it required a government that is open, a government that can be trusted by outside people.
We are seeing, a lot more development, in the country. I think before we only had one mine a few years ago. Now we have about, 6-7 mines, and we are seeing a lot of, private owners. A lot of investment is really coming into the country.
But the foundation for this growth was laid in 1991, when Frederick Chiluba came into power and instituted the country's grand privatization program, which privatized many state industries, abolished exchange controls, and endorsed free market principle.
Historically, there was an issue with the way things were during the days of the command economy, during what we call the Second Republic, the days of Kaunda. In those days, the government or the company would look after everything for your health. They would make sure you had a hospital, school. They would make sure your kids went to school. Mealie meal. There was even coupons for mealie meal. So they would subsidize food in the agricultural sector and the productive sector. Jobs were almost guaranteed. And then when things were liberalized in the early 90s, then we really had a shock.
This liberalization of the economy has seen over $9 billion worth of foreign direct investment, reported for 2008, spur development in all sectors. Under the leadership of former President Levin Mwanawasa, the country opened up its doors to international investors and in particular turned away from the West to attract investment from India and China.
The difference between, shall we say, Chinese investment and other investment is that it comes with what I would call grants. So they give you money without strings attached. But at the same time, they obviously want to increase on trade. And the bulk of our exports, for instance, copper exports, even though on the manifest it's destined for Switzerland, actually ends up in China.
It's China's growing economy that has set off the world's GDP. And this has been the driving force behind the copper boom in Zambia. The Chinese dragon needs copper for its industrial expansion, and that's why much of China's investment in Zambia has been focused on copper processing.
Virtually the raw material of copper is processed in Zambia, completely up to 99%. What we export is basically the final product of copper. However, we need to set up our own industries in terms of processing the copper into cables, various items that are semi-finished products. I think we are getting investments. The Chinese are interested in that. The Malaysians are interested in that.
But with copper prices almost halving from their peak of $8,900 last year, the future looks bleak for miners and the copper belt. This, combined with the country's new mining tax regime, has created a sense of uncertainty and has, like other mining houses around the world, led to job cuts.
Technologies have improved now. So we have more efficient technologies now, which means that even at reduced prices, I would like to believe that mines with efficient technologies will still be able to make a good profit. The other thing is that if the price goes down, then you have to go for more production in order to have a similar income. Now, I know for a fact that, for example, Rumwana mine is going to be one of the biggest mines in Africa. And this means that we will have a lot of production of copper. So this will compensate for the falling prices.
But while technology alone won't save mining houses, authorities say the increased mining taxes won't crush the industry.
Whether the current mining companies would want to shut down and leave, I do not believe that the issue of the taxes would be the prime move for that.
Copper provides 80% of Zambia's foreign exchange earnings, and government has realized that to put all your eggs in one basket is not a great idea. So like its neighbor Botswana, Zambia is focusing on diversifying its economy through sectors like financial services, construction, agriculture and tourism.
Zambia did realize that they cannot continue to have a mono economy that's just based on copper mining. Having said that, agriculture does offer major opportunities for diversification. But again, people must have access to credit. Again, there must be roads that penetrate the rural areas so that people can actually be attracted to go and invest in the rural areas. Tourism is another option, and this has been growing in the last 5-6 years. It does offer opportunities. And again, some areas can't be reached because of infrastructure. So it does appear to me that infrastructure is at the center of diversifying this economy.
Zambia's construction sector is booming. Spurred on by the mining sector, there is also a massive demand for housing as the country's middle class grows. And while the focus has been on copper as a major growth catalyst, it's really the construction sector that's been the fastest contributor to GDP growth.
With the exception of 2008, if you look at contribution to GDP growth, the mining sector has always ranked 6th or 8th, well beyond construction and other sectors.
One company that has cashed in on this boom is Sirocco Enterprises, a family-run business that's been around since 1981. The company started out as a small crushing operation using second-hand equipment. Now Sirocco has a number of operations, from a cement factory, brick-making plant, to property development. And despite the drop in commodity prices, Mustafa Sadi, who runs the company, seems to be one of the few business people, perhaps in the world, breathing a sigh of relief. The reason is he can finally catch up with his orders. But the situation was a lot different 5 years ago.
Having come from a very depressed 20 years of construction, there was hardly any building going on. The only building that was done was basically government and parastatal companies doing construction work. There was no money in the market for people, for the average person to build a house, or there was no shopping centers, there was hardly any office space which was coming up. And in the past 5 years, it just exploded like we never expected it to.
And this growth has led to a shortage in building materials like cement.
Zambia, it's a problem. We have had a problem procuring cement for the past 4 or 5 years, and then we decided if there was a way to produce our own cement, that would shield us from the, from the market problems. Trucks were waiting at Chilanga Cement for days to get, a few hundred bags, and the price was going up all the time. The demand, the supply was not secure. So we looked into the possibility of setting up a cement factory, and it took a long time, but we did. And then now we have vertically integrated business. We produce our own cement, our own aggregate, our own blocks. We sell ready-mix concrete, and we are going into property development and construction. We have just invested in a precast concrete factory that will allow us to build houses and office complexes and warehouses, very, very quickly, with minimum manpower. And then we will get a quality product that does not depend on laying bricks, which is, I think, an outdated way of building.
Almost 100 years ago, Cecil John Rhodes came up with an ambitious plan of building a railway line from Cape Town to Cairo. He had an engineer called P.T. Miller. Now, while the railway track never made it all the way to Cairo, P.T. Miller bought a tract of land here just outside Lusaka. His grandson, Robin Miller, is developing this land into the city's largest housing development.
And it's no wonder. The country is short of over 1 million houses.
This particular property was owned by my family for some 100 years. And we also do a bit of farming, and this particular 250 hectares was never actually useful for agricultural purposes. We only ever grazed cattle on here. And we are in the Lusaka City Council boundaries. And therefore, in terms of analysing what was best used for this property, we decided that we should do a housing development.
The Delaya Housing Project is a pioneer in housing development in Zambia. Launched in May 2006, it aims to build over 3,700 houses. There were a few reasons why it was a good time to start this project. Firstly, banks needed to get creative with their products as they weren't earning much money from government paper anymore, and so the mortgage market was created. Around that time, Zambia's middle class emerged, hungry for housing.
It's been a shift in terms of needing to have or wanting to own your own assets and not wanting to be at the mercy of somebody else. The demands of the rental market are high in terms of having high rent and a big amount up front. And we're now seeing that the money actually could be used to purchase something that they retain for their own future and for their family's future. So the shift from the rental market to the home ownership market has been big in terms of coinciding with the growing middle class, and also the fact that there has been the start of the financial mortgages being available to people too.
But starting out in an industry that's really in its infancy is no easy task, and one of the major challenges in this sector is infrastructure development.
The key startup challenge is the provision of infrastructure. Infrastructure is hugely expensive. To flush one loo, you can't just provide water to that one house. In terms of this 250 hectares, we will have in due course 3,000, 3,500 units. So you have to build the infrastructure which allows for that development. So to build one house, you have to spend many millions of dollars in infrastructural cost in order to provide the water and the sewage out for that one house. In the nature of Zambia, for many years we had very limited construction capacity in the country. So we were very insistent that we had a capable contractor to do the job, but we wanted that contractor to joint venture with a local company. So we have as the main contractor on this site a company called John Sisk & Sons, who are one of Ireland's biggest builders. They have an operation based in Harare, John Sisk Africa, and they have committed to Zambia in joint venture with a local company called Velis Enterprises.
But the boom is not only centered around the residential sector. In the commercial sector, you'll see South African-styled retail centers popping up like mushrooms all over the country. Recently, a major deal was signed between South Africa's Liberty Properties and the Zambia National Pension Scheme Authority to build a $200 million retail development in the heart of Lusaka.
Liberty Properties is obviously a big name. The Zambian market is aware of what they did with Santon. So, from my perspective, the Zambian expectation is the same. They want the same A-grade type of product. The land that they've got is very prime, and it will add a lot of value to the CBD.
The construction boom is closely aligned with the tourism sector, and what was the sleepy town of Livingston is fast becoming a bustling tourist destination.
Zambia's financial services sector has been pinpointed as a key area of growth. Over the past few years, this sector has become a stable and secure environment where investors from around the world have enjoyed the recent boom.
If you go back 5-10 years ago, essentially you had a market where the vast majority of the investment, both by the institutional investors, the commercial banks and the investment banks, was related to government paper. When the Mwanawasa administration came in 2001, there was the whole push towards meeting the HIPIC completion point, which had started through the Chilua administration. The Mwanawasa administration became a lot more aggressive with it. That was met about 4 or 5 years ago. And the interesting thing we saw in that transformation was once that the targets had been met and the debt forgiveness and other things had come through, that administration still maintained the same path. And so there was a lot more fiscal discipline from the government. There was a lot more openness with the private sector. The yields in government paper dropped. And so we suddenly saw now banks trying to be a lot more creative in what they do.
The privatization program catapulted the creation of the Lusaka Stock Exchange, which in 2007 increased by 44% and was Africa's top-performing stock exchange.
Clearly, 2008 was a difficult year for the Lusaka Stock Exchange on the back of what had been a very strong, stellar run into 2007. To put that into perspective, in 2007 we listed a cobalt energy company, CEC, that was hugely successful. It was followed by Celtel, now Zain, and we also did Zambia National Commercial Bank.
The biggest concern for the financial sector at the moment is how to mitigate the effects of the global financial crisis. Zambia is an open market for foreign fund managers, and the real effects are still to be felt.
We've felt it in that foreign investors have driven the market to some extent. In the good times, of course, they come in their numbers, and they give us the visibility that we require. But of late, in 2007, we've seen that in a negative kind of way, in that they've been selling out for various reasons, as you know, and that has had an impact both on the exchange rate as well as on the general price levels.
And it's this openness that some say is a double-edged sword for Zambia.
Part of the success of the Lusaka Stock Exchange is the fact that Zambia is an open economy. We do not have exchange controls. We do not have limits on foreign share ownership. We do not have capital gains tax. So that has made the Lusaka Stock Exchange particularly attractive to foreign investors, particularly emerging market fund managers. And also you have to look at the fact that for many years the Lusaka Stock Exchange valuation levels were extremely low, and that made the market also very attractive. And therefore we were affected by the global economic crisis or the global downturn. So yes, we are connected into the global economy, that's a reality, and we need to really find a way in which we can manage that situation. And my view is that we need to develop the domestic institutional investment base. We need to strengthen that significantly so that more local investors are involved in the domestic market.
The financial services industry might be small, but it's certainly not boring. The sector is seeing a lot of intra-Africa activity, and this might just be the answer to surviving the global slowdown.
Is that there's a lot more interest being expressed from Namibia, Kenya, Nigeria, and obviously South Africa. And on the South African side, what we are seeing is a lot of it is in the real estate segment. On the Nigerian side, you obviously have Access, who have now been operating in Zambia for the last 2 months or so. And there's talk of UBA, EcoBank, which is more of a West African bank, but sort of still from the same region. In addition to that, we are aware that Dangote, through cement and sugar, is also very keen to establish himself in Zambia. On the Zambian side, you also have Zambeef, which is Zambia's largest agribusiness, and they have a regional and Pan-African rollout as well.
Along with foreign direct investment, there is a concerted effort to developing the small and medium-sized enterprises sector.
The SME sector is definitely one of our growth sectors. The SME is the growth sector here in Zambia. When you have a growing economy like you have in Zambia, the SMEs tend to be the engine of growth.
The Lusaka Stock Exchange is modelling a version of the JSE's Altex to form an SME bourse.
The approval has been given by the regulator for us to establish a third tier to take care of the small and medium enterprises.
Zambia's also made it a whole lot easier to set up a business, and this will put it in good favour with companies struggling with bureaucracy. And that's one of the reasons Zambia is slowly climbing the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business Index.
We are a very peaceful country. Our economic climate is improving every year. We are reducing the cost of doing business in Zambia. The regulatory framework, the policies, and other regulations that constrain investment in Zambia, we're streamlining that. For instance, the licensing process is going on whereby we are going to reduce the licenses that are required for somebody to set up a business by about 60%, so that people can come here and just register a company and get on with business without having to be bogged down by so many licenses that our current companies go through. and the renewal of licenses. That is a heavy cost to doing business.
But the ease of doing business depends on good public and private partnerships. And while much has been improved on that front, a lot still needs to be done.
There must be confidence that we are all in this together, public sector as well as private sector. We do now have a public-private policy framework in place, which was drawn up jointly between public sector and private sector. So that's a policy that is going to guide the relationship between government and private sector.
And what are the key areas of that framework?
There are various, but the main focus is on infrastructure development. We need to work together to improve on the infrastructure.
And with the growing middle class averse to renting houses, the construction and real estate sector is where the real opportunities are.
This is the major reason why we've seen the tourism industry in Zambia pick up so much over the last few years. The Victoria Falls, really one of the world's most splendid tourist destinations. Just over there is Zimbabwe, and because of the economic and political crisis we're seeing in that country, a lot of tourists would rather come to the Zambian side to view these magnificent falls.
We want to go to Zambia actually because it was more easier this time because of all the political problems in Zimbabwe. So that was the main reason actually for the rest, because it must be beautiful from that side as well.
And it's this influx of tourists that has seen businesses like Chris Tett's luxury train service, the Royal Livingston Express, steam ahead. It may look like the set of an Agatha Christie movie, but make no mistake, this train is able to cater for the ever-growing high-end tourist market in Livingston.
From our perspective, we were dealing with, 20, 30, 40 clients a month, whereas now, we can move 500 people in a day. We deal in the high-end market. We're dealing with the Royal Livingston, Zambezi Sun, David Livingstone Lodge and Spa, which is all 3 to 5-star hotels, and that has really been the big growth that we've seen here. I think the backpacking market has expanded as well. It's always been here, but your real growth has been in those development of those actual hotels themselves, and with the development of the hotels came the critical bed mass, which came the expansion in tourism.
Electricity is a constant concern for all businesses operating in Zambia. But for entrepreneurial couple Judy Helmholtz and Arthur Sonnenberg, this is something they've come to deal with and still make coops of money. Zambezi & Cuckoo is a company everyone in Livingston knows about. Judy and Arthur started it some 14 years ago, pulling out all the stops to make their company and product competitive. From a strict biosecurity policy to a punk rock chicken logo, Zambezi & Cuckoo has grown far beyond the expectations of its owners.
The other day was looking at something that made me laugh. When we started, we had 200 chickens. I think the first year we maybe did 1,000 chickens. I was just looking at a business plan that we had done quite a few years ago, and our plan was to do 36,000 chickens in a year. Yeah, and now we do about 20,000 chickens a month.
Well, we have 20,000 chickens on the farm, and so with that, it's about almost 150,000 in a year.
So, there's been a significant increase, and in fact, Tyson, which is a big chicken manufacturer in the U.S., they did an analysis and realized we were growing the same as Tyson, but in kwaches, not dollars. As more people come in, not just lodges, I would say as investors come in, not just lodges and tourist enterprises, they've obviously grown, but there's a whole bunch of associated businesses that come in and that support tourism. And so, and that's the category that we're in that, we're providing a food product. So as Livingston economy has grown, we have grown proportionate with that and, are now significantly bigger. And so our little chicken farm on the side has turned into, this huge enterprise.
The company now produces, processes, and delivers to most lodges and outlets in town. But of course, operating successfully in Zambia means being able to manage a risk.
The infrastructure in Zambia has improved, is improving. We are, like South Africa, I guess, to have some power outages. We've tried to design our operations so that we can cope with power outages. We have a little generator, and we've also designed all our freezers to be able to cope with 3 or 4 days without power. This luckily has only happened sort of once since we've had everything in operation. But we're quite capable, and our staff have been fantastic. They pull out all stops to keep us going when the challenges hit.
And it's these kinds of partnerships that Judy and Arthur feel make a company and its employees really grow. Charles Sinjele started out as a gardener and is now the farm's manager.
I only knew how to pack vegetables, and I've learned how to look after chickens. I've learned how to weld. I've learned how to drive. I'm a very good driver.
So maybe when it comes to doing business in Zambia, you've just got to go with the flow.
If you're looking at investing in whether it's Zambia or another country in Africa, make your business plan, triple check your business plan, then double your costs and half your profits. Yeah? If it still makes sense, then throw away your business plan and go get an investment license.
Zambia!